Enrolling in the Academy is really simple. You'll just go to our website, wblinc.org/academy. And when you get here, you'll see our main page and you can click enroll and it'll take you to this form where you're just gonna fill this out. It'll take you about 5 minutes. Once you submit this, you're enrolled in the Academy and you'll receive an email from me so you can pick the classes you'd like to take and join our Academy family. So we're an after-school program rooted in hip hop. So we have a bunch of classes that you may find interesting. You can go right to our website and go to our classes tab and you'll see some of them, from performing arts like hip hop theater, spoken word, hip hop dance, some of our business classes that are like a boss and walk it like I talk it, which would be more arts management and entrepreneur based. And then we also have things like our music classes, MCing and rapping and beat production and DJing. You can go to wblinc.org/academy to enroll.
What's going on, good people? It's yours truly, Mazi Mutafa, Executive Director, Words, Beats, and Life, and we're here for the second convening of Hip Hop Futures. This one's an international conversation with people who we worked with from around the world who are doing super important work, and we want to talk to them about the future of hip hop culture. I think it's important for people in a U.S. context to realize that even though hip hop is now 49 years old in the United States, that there are other communities of hip hop that have been emerging after that. I know Brussels takes great pride in the fact that 1 year after it began in New York City, it began in Brussels and in Paris. So hopefully we're gonna have some folks here. We're gonna talk about what's happening in their own thriving hip hop communities, their approach to hip hop, and the ways in which it's making a difference. Each of the people that's gonna be presenting today is a hip hop organizer, a hip hop scholar, or a hip hop artist. We're actually going to start with my brother from another mother, who I had the amazing opportunity to work with to coordinate our very first event in New York City called Nights of the Raj, with Mohammed Ali, also known as Aerosol Ali, coming to us all the way from Birmingham, England. What's going on, Mohammed? Assalamu alaikum. So we're having that, so your mic, the mic, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's not working.
I had you on mute.
There you are.
Yeah,
there you are. It's weird. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I had you on mute just then, so that was my fault.
That would explain it. So Mohammed, for the folks that aren't familiar with your work, maybe do a quick introduction of yourself, your beginnings in graffiti, and by quick I mean just a couple of minutes, kind of your bio, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring on Emile next.
Sure. Okay, I'll be real quick. I guess primarily my art form was graffiti art, and being in the UK, I'm born and raised in the UK, in 1978. So kind of an 80s, growing up in the 80s as a young child, but being exposed to hip hop culture in the city of Birmingham in the UK. I just remember that those were the kind of glorious years of seeing how hip hop kind of evolved and spread through, you know, to a British city in the UK. And I was one of those kids who kind of immersed myself in the kind of the pillar of hip hop, which was graffiti art, the spray can. And ever since then, really, until now, I'm still spraying walls and painting and painting murals. What was for me most exciting was that I was able to take graffiti art and kind of make it as my own, if you like, which was to basically embed within it a bit of myself, a bit of my art, a bit of my faith, my culture, my own heritage as a son of an immigrant from Bangladesh, in fact, from South Asia to the UK. And I began exploring aspects of faith, and in particular my Muslim faith, and kind of weaving into my graffiti art. That was what was really exciting for me, that seeing how graffiti art could be, you know, I could take as my own. And actually at that time, in the times when I was doing it, very rare would you see graffiti art written in any other script other than in English. You know, wherever it went in the world, you would still see kind of pretty much a kind of reflection of what we saw in the subways of New York, kind of in Europe and in Australia and wherever you went in the world. And it just occurred to me, I thought, well, why can we not kind of really weave in our own script into that, if you like. So playing with Arabic scripts and aspects of faith and Quranic scripts was something that I was kind of playing with and painting them into my murals. So that, yeah, that's a bit of an overview of the style of hip hop and graffiti art that I got involved with.
That's beautiful. For folks that aren't familiar with the form you're talking about, most people call it calligraphy. I know that you do traditional graffiti too, in terms of characters and images. You did a stencil campaign around the life of Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. Yeah, I've kind of evolved a little bit. There was a point where I became this kind of the Muslim graffiti artist, and in fact, the British press would refer to me as the Muslim Banksy, and I became a bit frustrated with that, because I kind of felt like I'm not just that. It's very easy to be pigeonholed as someone who's just doing the Muslim stuff or playing with Islamic scripts, and I felt like, no, that we can be more than that. There's no doubt. Yes, I was inspired by my faith, but of course I can. My murals do kind of extend beyond that, and we aren't this just kind of one dimensional, if you like, that we only just explore our faith, but we explore other issues that are political issues or whatever it might be.
We should come back to this, because it's interesting that in some ways that what I hear you describing is what, and I don't want you to respond to this because I want to go ahead and bring on Emile, but I hear you describing a similar phenomena to Black artists in the US, not wanting to be just thought of as Black artists. They want to be seen as the best at what they do. And let's go ahead and go to Emile on this one. So Emile,
hey,
what's going on? Coming to us live from Johannesburg, but I know
Cape Town.
Oh, from Cape Town.
Yeah.
Every place in South Africa is one place. My bad. From Cape Town. And I know that you're doing double duty, living in the US and traveling back to continue to do the work that you've been doing in South Africa. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the work that you've been doing historically, and even getting up to the writing? Just a quick intro.
Okay. Yeah, so I do, I started as a b-boy in 1982, a group called Pop Lad Crew here in Cape Town, South Africa. And later created one of the first rap groups, Black Noise. And then more, 98, we started Heal the Wood Project, which teaches all the elements of hip hop culture, plus a few other things, and developed it into a not-for-profit organization that works in 13 schools at the moment. So we see about 900 kids a week, and use the elements of hip hop to blend it with a sense of self-worth. And yeah, it's been going amazingly. Getting young people to create their own music videos, and but our focus obviously is on changing the narrative and changing how they think about themselves, and trying to sway away from the usual conversations that are written about the Cape Flats and the communities that we work in. Yeah, so that's what we're busy doing at the moment.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, so now we're getting to our guest where we're having Wi-Fi difficulty. We're going to see if we can make this happen. Coming to us all the way from Uganda, we've got a good friend of mine and mentor, Babaluku. Let's see if this Wi-Fi connection is going to work. Babaluku, are you there? Oh, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, we can hear you too. So, can you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do? Like I said, I just WhatsApped you to say that sometimes if you turn off your visual, it makes it easier for your audio to work, because putting on the video and the audio takes more Wi-Fi. But let's see.
Got you. Yeah.
Let's try to turn off your camera, because your audio was coming through perfectly clear when your camera was turned off. Why don't we try it now? All right. So, yeah. Coming to us live from Brussels, we've got our friend Fatima. Fatima, how's your Wi-Fi? Because I see your connection is strong. I see your camera's still off, so I'm not sure if you're actually able to hear us. Still having problems. All right. All right, fellas. Well, it looks like because our fifth guest, who's based in Paris, was also having problems with her Wi-Fi. So it looks like Fatima said she can hear us, but we can't hear or see her. So we are going to have to carry the conversation about the work that each of you are doing. I'm really grateful to both of you for being here and for having good Wi-Fi connection. It's interesting, 2 years into the pandemic, it's still difficult to engage with Wi-Fi, which just lifts up one of the challenges, whether it is in Uganda or Brussels or France. The access to Wi-Fi, the digital divide, is real. And so I wonder, maybe before we get into kind of what you all see as the future, I know enough about each of your works to be able to talk in some detail about it, but maybe we begin with how you each have been navigating the pandemic, continuing to do your work, and how your work has evolved, if at all, as a result of isolation or you know, the reality of lots of people dying around the world because of COVID. How has that impacted the work that you're doing and the kinds of work you're
Who would you like? Emile, would you like to go first?
You can go, it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to go first? Okay. All right. All right. So how the pandemic has impacted the work that we do. Obviously, the work was no doubt impacted because a lot of what I was doing and what a lot of artists were doing was traveling, yeah, and that fundamentally changed during the pandemic, where we weren't able to kind of travel and connect and share our work with communities in different parts of the world, and essentially that was the beauty of what we did, because we were taking our work into different places and responding to different communities and learning and bringing some of that back to my own community. So there was this kind of connectivity and exchange that took place through travel. And once that travel stopped, suddenly, we were all confined to our places behind our screens. But there was also a beauty in that, in how we seem to connect differently. Yes, we've had technical issues as we've just experienced, but there was something quite special about that connectivity that happened, that I feel like the pandemic opened up many doors, in fact, where there was, where the world almost was forced to kind of engage in this way. We were also kind of connected to new audiences as well. So I certainly use the platform of live streaming and using OBS and kind of multi-screen, being a bit more creative about it. It forced me to think beyond this kind of format that we have, which is speaking to you within this screen here. I was connecting my iPad Pro into Zoom and into OBS software, which is kind of like multi-screen live streaming, where you're being a bit more creative. So I kind of enjoyed it, and it was very, it was a good challenge actually, to how can we enhance this experience of sitting behind our damn screens like this, but actually share our art in different ways. And so this is where I found personally a way techniques and working online in this way as well.
Yeah, I mean, on my side, I was stuck in California. I was about to leave to get back to South Africa, and then realized that I might not be able to see my wife and kids if I had to get on that flight, which would probably have been the reality. So I was glad that I decided to stay. And in the process, I was able to also be more introspective about the history of hip hop in South Africa, and finding ways to document stories. I've written about 4 books. Today, I just launched one of the launch days of Reconnect the String, and the the lockdown actually inspired me to write this book. I was busy with making a black news and decided to write this one when I heard that there would be b-boying at the Olympics, you know, and usually with b-boying or breaking, you also have the culture and the history, and you know, being stuck in the US made me think about Black Lives Matter and about why at this point in time are we still wanting people to, you know, like understand that our lives matter as Black people. Like why is it so hard for them to comprehend? And so I wrote this, making the connection between Africa and African form, First Nation form of expression, and hip hop culture, you know, and the connection to b-boying, and my 40 years of experience woven into it as a way to also, you know, leave the story, because we were losing a lot of b-boys, a lot of hip hop practitioners, who I feel stories are forever lost because we waited for someone to write and speak on our behalf. And so it was very powerful, the period of time being away from South Africa at such a time. And also just, you know, connecting with people like Osmic of the South African Hip Hop Museum, and getting young people to connect and understand the heritage and history, and using, exactly like Mohammed was saying, using the social media networks to upload stories about the resistance from during apartheid. I think a lot of young people have not been exposed to. So I used it in that manner most of the time to, you know, reconnect or recollect the past.
So it looks like we might have everyone here. Fatima, welcome.
Sorry, I have
No
a problem
problem,
with my computer. No, it's,
no problem. Do you want to begin just by, we've asked the first question, but do you want to begin just talking a little bit about what you do, who you are, where you are, just basic information?
yeah, so I launched in 2017 the festival La Belle Hip Hop, which gather women, international women from several countries, from Asia, from Africa, from Europe, from United States, to share the scene together and to show their talent in hip hop culture. The idea was also to build bridges between women, to share their experience, experience in their respective countries, through graffiti, through rap, to DJing, through the elements of hip hop. And after that, La Belle Hip Hop becomes an NGO, doing lots of activities like workshops, like exhibition, awareness campaign about violence against women. So, and yes, it's the project that we are still carry on and trying to develop some new projects. There's years after days and months after months, yeah.
And so I have a special connection with you because I was literally at the last in-person La Belle Hip Hop Festival when COVID hit, right before the big concert. So I wonder, what have you been doing since COVID in Brussels?
It was really difficult because the COVID started around March in Belgium. It was during the period of the festival. So we used to organize a 1-week festival. So due to COVID, we had to stop in the middle of the festival. So we were working to build the first international female battle. We worked on it for I don't know many months, and we had to cancel it. So we just kept the opening concerts and I think 1 or 2 workshops, and the rest has to be canceled. The rest of the festival was just to find a way to help the artists to go back to their home, because the flights were full and complicated to find connection. And since the COVID, we made next year a live festival. So and yes, some workshop, but it was really difficult for, I think it was a worldwide problem. to settle cultural projects.
Thank you so much. Looks like Babaluku's got a good connection and the light is popping. So, Baba, do you want to introduce yourself, the work you're doing, and then the second question is what you've been doing since COVID?
So like I was doing earlier, Babaluku, Kampala, Uganda, representing Babaluku Foundation, originally known as a member of Bataka Squad, the pioneers of indigenous hip hop culture in Uganda. As from a hip hop perspective, and what we've been trying to do is to use the transformative arts to connect movements and build community connection to ensure that all practitioners get a chance to be showcased, to be seen, and most importantly, to gain skills that can guide them into building movements in their communities. So we're very passionate about movement building. Since COVID, what have we been up to? Of course, thanks to Words Based on Life, we collaborated on some productions. So we were able to do that and produce and bring artists in-house to create part of the showcases, like the winter series. We were able to do a few production with that. Us on ourselves on our side. We didn't have zero motion, so we had no way of connecting or convening. So everyone was locked in. Towards the end of COVID era, there we had a chance a bit of relaxed motion. A bunch of ciphers that literally were the way we were communicating to the people about issues to do with COVID and what we were going through, what we were experiencing. And it really got a lot of love and welcome because people could relate to the conditions that were happening at the time. Beyond that, we also ran a program that was feeding people during COVID, which literally allowed us to learn more. It was focused on feeding our grandmothers, women, and it gave us an outlook on what really was going on in the community and what we are doing and what we are capable of being able to do more of. Beyond that, we've been to organize a comeback. We are celebrating 20 years of indigenous hip hop culture in Uganda this year. And so we're looking forward to mobilizing and organizing ourselves for our first convening ever since the pandemic that will be celebrated with all our relatives, both in the diaspora and here on the continent, to come together and bring us together again in that beautiful space where we like to convene and talk about the future of the culture.
Thank you so much, Babaluku. All right, so now that we're all here and all of our Wi-Fis are working, I'm really personally excited to have each of you here. Unfortunately, Rose, who's a part of an organization called Juste, Debout, she's one of the organizers. She's not the head of it, but she supports the CEO and founder, Bruce. And so I wanted her to come to talk about the work that she does. Unfortunately, her Wi-Fi connection isn't working, but shout out to Bruce, shout out to Rose. Hopefully we'll get them next time. This is the second in a series of at least 3 conversations we're going to host about the futures of hip hop. The first one really featured people from throughout the United States talking about their own experiences, things that have mattered, kind of signpost moments or points that are really important about the past, but also remembering the things from the past that make hip hop powerful and useful to think about its future. And so I wanted to bring each of you here to talk really about what you see as the future of your work, that none of us could have predicted 3 years ago, that the only way that many of us would see each other would be virtually. I know as the world has begun to open up in the last few months, more and more of us are doing more work in person. And so I wonder, first, like what you see as not the hip hop, the future of hip hop as a culture per se, but about the future of the work that you do that is either hip hop centered or hip hop inspired. What is the future of your work as you think about the next 5 or 10 years of working through this culture and in this community? Who'd like to begin just thinking about vision? Maybe actually, Bob, maybe we should start with you, because of everyone on the call, you're the one that I'm aware of having had the greatest transformation during COVID with the securing of a really large property. So maybe you talk about that, and then maybe we go to Mohammed to talk about his shift to bring on an executive director to let him really be the artistic director of the work they're doing and the kind of collaborations, then Emile, then Fatima. How about that?
Mazi say so. Let's go. Salute. I mean, as hip hop culture, most often we all know that we come from marginalized concepts and ideologies, and most often our battle upstream is to not only fight for our space from the table, but to really make our work felt as important work in communities. From Babaluku Foundation, we hit a glitch, like 3 years back where we lost our space and we were really struggling by floating around and working with different organizations. But as always, when you are a leader in a space, you're always looking for safe ways to convene and continue to draw a vision, that's bringing more builders and more leaders together. So during the COVID, while we were, thinking on the ideas that we are not certain of what's going to happen after, there was a need to also know that we were still capable of contributing to a legacy. And so in that idea of contributing to a legacy, there was the aspiration of what does it look like? Do we go back to the old ways that we're operating? Do we transition into the new ways? And so from that point, we were able to take a leap of faith that definitely challenges. But for the first time in Uganda, I would like to say that a hip hop community is moving into an amenity that's worthy, that's worthy of representing the culture, bringing our community together, and convening and being able to host conferences, gatherings, and learnings. It's the first time that we've been able to actually hit that level of access where we know now we are the architects of the stories we want to tell. So that's been really giving us a powerful, mission ahead, and also challenging us on new authentic ways we could build, having learned what COVID has put up as challenges for us. Beyond that, we're also using, when you talk about futures of our work, we're also using the space to gear us into building the first hip hop creative satellite village. That's where we're going. Where we're moving into purchasing land. We're working on a model of working with our family in the diaspora and working with our relatives here to somehow get into real land justice, community leadership and mobilization. But the biggest part of it is the economic growth that we could be able to avail our people by a shared system that is developed to engage everyone to be a part of growing the culture. So we're looking at coming up with new models now. I'm working with architects. I'm consulting with various leaders to be able to make this dream a feasible dream that young people could know that when the culture existed, we built a legacy gift that provided a village of learning, access. I mean, we just, somewhere we're securing land on the Nile. So it's very special to us because it's by the Nile. It's a pivotal, significant remembering commemoration point of how far the culture could travel and return at the source. And Brother Mazi has been a part of the Back to the Source experience, and he's been able to move through that energy. But it's at this day and time, we're being given the power to re-envision and very much be unapologetic of the actions we are taking in the community. And the leaders are following us now instead of challenging us, because the frequency in which we are delivering the transformative work we've been talking about for the last 15 years, they can visibly see young MCs who are leaders, young B-boys who are literally leading communities and teaching and carrying all of this generation on their back. Remember, in Uganda, we're around 83% under 30. So a huge generation now engaging in the culture is definitely going to be the one taking up the spaces we are creating, because we see a future where the culture is here, it is educating, it is connecting, it is transforming, it's developing new pathways for all our relatives across the globe to always be able to convene on the continent. And we see it as a liberation key. We are in that space to feel like we've brought a liberated voice and liberated action for the youth to be able to guide us into the futures we are imagining.
When we come back, we're going to have to talk a little bit about some of the things that are truly unique, at least to my knowledge, that are uniquely happening in Uganda with things like hip hop farmers. So MCs that also own land and grow crops and things like that. Mohammed, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sure. Okay. As you know, Mazi, you've even been hosted in our very humble art space that we set up, and the organization I run called Soul City Arts. Right. We had a small, intimate art center, and we've had a couple actually. They've kind of come and gone, and where we've been in there 3-4 years, and we've developed, and then we've lost the space, and then we kind of lose a bit of momentum. The exciting thing now, and post pandemic as well, actually, we're at a kind of critical point in growth, right? It's a bit of an enough is enough moment where we say, look, we're really committed now. We really are. We mean business. The pandemic created a moment for us to kind of wake up and stand up and ask important questions of ourselves about the things that we value, the things that we take for granted. I myself lost my mother through COVID, and there's so much personally that has impacted me, and made us question where we are on our trajectories. So the space that I mentioned, I mean, YS mentioned the fact that you've seen our humble, intimate space, but now we've only just about 6 months ago moved into a space that it was probably about 20 times the size, right? A giant industrial warehouse space that we've taken on in the community to show them and actually, right, really show people that we mean business now. We've heard the words marginalized being used just earlier, right? We've heard terms about this hip expression of hip hop being being from a place of struggle of a people that perhaps who didn't feel heard, felt marginalized, disenfranchised, etc., etc. All these terms that we hear used by government in reference to perhaps people of immigrant background or people of color or people who are so-called disadvantaged, right? And really, that's for me where the spirit of hip hop is what kind of really is injected into all of my work, even though there's not always a spray can inside. Whilst I'm primarily a street artist, often you could remove the spray can, but the spirit of hip hop is still there because it's about the street and it's about the spirit of the street that's kind of injected into all of our art, whether it's theater, movement, film that we make. Hip hop and the accessibility, the kind of the very almost like we made this art, right? Over the decades, this was an art form that was derived from youth, from young people where we didn't have to go to some institution that it was taught to us. We made it and we made it our own. So that work of acquiring this large scale space, and as you mentioned, Mazi, us just acquiring key people, members of staff that will now help us move forward in the next few decades, right? It's a really, really, really key point now. I was asked, how long does it take? We've got this giant space, and someone might say, how is that possible? How did you, as a grassroots community organization, just be given this space just like that, right? And I always say, listen, it took us 2 decades to get that space, right? Of having space, then not having space, and just experimenting and learning how to create art that speaks to everyday folks and tell their stories in extraordinary form. It took us 2 decades to get that space. Don't think that just came out of nowhere. It took us 2 decades for us to persevere and just experiment. And only now we're ready for that real work. Yeah. And the people who asked me that was a mainstream, large scale theater space that wanted to know the magic formula of how you engage marginalized communities, right? And they said to me, how long does it take? If we give you an artist to work in that community, can you tell us how long it will take? And I said, it will take you 25 years for you to learn how to engage with this community respectfully, authentically. There isn't no fast track. You can't get that just like that. You don't build trust and respect just by, parachuting into a neighborhood, right? It comes with years and years and years of dedication and proving that we're not here chasing funds. We're not here just trying to position ourselves so we can get this funding and pay ourselves a wage. We do this because we care about our people.
I love that, brother. Emile, you ready?
Oh yeah, no, I was just listening and echoing a lot of what is being said. That we just about 2 weeks ago we just purchased a property for Hilderwood to be based and then develop into a space where hip hop lives in the neighborhood I grew up in. So I think we've also spent a great deal of our time healing the mindsets of people, and people forget this about South Africa, that it has been 28 years since the first opportunity we had to vote, you know, and so we are also extremely diverse society. So the work we do in Cape Town is with a community that is still dealing with a lot of the trauma of apartheid, you know, and so we have this idea of trying to change the state of mind in order for us to actually have a better outcome. And so we are challenging what is being taught in the school system by supplying alternative information, information about the greatness that is not being taught in the schools. Our schools are extremely Eurocentric. They still teach mostly European history and European art, and so we for the last couple of years we've been dissecting information and sharing it with young people, and creating a syllabus, you know. And like I said, we're in 13 schools, and we've built quite a amazing track record. And some of our facilitators are actually our students. One of them being with us for the last 18 years. So I echo what Mohammed was saying about, you know, you don't just parachute in, you have to do the work to really bring about the change. And you have to constantly be willing to reimagine the solutions, because they don't exist, you know. And so we are creating a lot of the material ourselves, a lot of the, you know, the syllabi that are being taught by the different facilitators. And in 2 weeks, when I go up to Johannesburg for the first time, we'll start looking to expanding Hildewood project in other provinces in South Africa, and using the years of actual experience to look at how a different community with a different language and a different traditional background can use the pilot project that we've created over time to make it specific to their community, because you want to have it to be culturally relevant instead of like completely removed from their reality. So that's the type of work we've been busy doing over the years. And actually at this point, they don't really need me. That's why it's easy for me to head back to the States. So I'll leave it at that.
And Fatima, I know that not only have you been doing the work to celebrate the contributions of women within hip hop in Brussels, but you've also been doing work in your ancestral country of origin, being Morocco, so where your family is from. So do you want to talk about the work you're doing in Brussels and the work you've also done, or the work you plan to do in Brussels and potentially work you plan to do in Morocco?
Yeah, not only in Morocco. As if you remember, Mazi, we made some years ago during the festival. It was, and we were partner during this festival, where we decided to not only to welcome international artists, but also to send Belgian artists to perform in several countries, include so the Washington. We had like some partnership, and the idea is to extend the project abroad. So to have like La Belle Hip Hop in Morocco, to have it in USA, to have it in France, or in Africa or in Asia. That's the idea. And also it's the way to make this project, to grow this project, and also to continue to develop the hip hop culture by creating partnership in other countries. So like La Belle Hip Hop is not, yes, it was built in Belgium, but the idea is to make it really international projects by having it in everywhere. In Morocco, yes, we made like some workshop. We made some project with youth. Also like some events, some concerts. And if we talk about the future of hip hop, we are also partnership with the project called Hip Hop School, If you heard about Mazi, I don't know if we spoke about it last time. So Hip Hop School is like also this project to educate youth through the element of hip hop, and it's the best way also to let this future of hip hop, to give it the best way for the future of hip hop is to educate youth this idea of transmission. Like as we said, this culture is able to change the negativity into positivity. And that's the project on which we are working, and we try to develop for the forthcoming years. Voilà.
Well, this is wonderful news. One of the reasons why I invited Rose to be here is not just because of the work that Juste Debout has done for the last 2 decades, hosting international dance competitions in Paris, but also because of what's happening in Paris. Like it's probably no mistake that the very first Olympics to feature breaking as a sport is going to be in Paris. I had an opportunity during my last visit to Paris to visit the country's national hip hop center, which is located in Paris, France, and they're doing some of what all of us are talking about, kind of building space, but it's funded by the government, so it's a government space. They have a library there of hip hop books. So Emile, you definitely need to work on getting your book into that space. Mohammed, you should probably be talking to them about how to bring you from Birmingham to France to engage the French hip hop community and the visual arts, because they have a theater space too, and I know they feature hip hop theater in that space. And because you share language with them, Fatima, thinking about how it is you're able to collaborate with that French culture. And this isn't a commercial for them, but it is to say when I went there, it was probably the most impressive hip hop center that I've been to. And it's like some things that I've seen in the US where it's connected to a mall. So it's not a thing that's out by itself. It's a thing where people already go. Like it's part of a commercial district so that it's easy for them to reach young people. And I didn't just see young people in there, particularly in the library. I saw a lot of older people in there who were interested in learning. And I feel like that's the beauty of this conversation, is that not only is the work that Fatima's doing in Brussels reaching adults through concerts or battles, but she's also doing work to reach out to young people. We did our very first elder workshop with Fatima because she had a relationship with a retirement home. So we brought a graffiti workshop to people that were retired, and they had little kids, younger children in there with them to support and helping them pass out markers and all that good stuff. So thinking about the kind of ways in which each of you is innovating. Innovation, I think, is key to all of your works. Maybe sharing for the people who haven't had the privilege that I have to be able to witness your work in person, how you think about innovation in your efforts. Like, I don't think, even though all of you are practitioners of either breaking, rapping, DJing, or graffiti, or that fifth element, knowledge of self, because me and Fatima and I have that in common, that we're the people that kind of think about the work, we're the curators and have the relationships. I wonder what role you think each of you plays in innovating what hip hop means in your respective country and as a part of the kind of global work that each of you is involved in. How do you think about innovation? Who'd like to go first? I don't want to call on anybody. Go ahead, Fatima.
Let's talk about rap. If you see just the French scene, we have more and more youth people, youth rappers. And also when you see in France, they have many projects that invite youth to perform, and like cypher, like open mic. This kind of projects make this hip hop movement growing day after day. We have also the same in Belgium, and for this part, I'm also partner of a project called Rappeuse, based in Paris, and they doing like this open mic in several cities in France, and at the end they're doing a final, and after that the final, the girl can have like the possibility to register an EP, and also to be supported by a radio station, like sponsorship. And this kind of project is, yes, we see a lot of kind of project like this in France, in Belgium. So that's mainly in rap. And if we talk about the breakdance, as you said, Mazi, we saw also many b-boys and b-girls doing like having like many clubs in Belgium and in France. So all this stuff we are seeing more and more. It's a proof that the hip hop movement is very growing fast, very fast.
Just as a point of personal privilege, I love when I interview people that facilitate, because Fatima not only answered the first question, but she answered my next question, which was also going to be about collaboration. So maybe thinking about how it is that each of you are innovating in your work, and also who you're collaborating with. Who'd like to jump in next?
I'll go again.
Damn, go ahead, Baba.
When you talk about innovation, I think it's a great question on how the culture allows us to innovate. Currently, with the work happening in the new space, we've been looking at all the frontline topics that engage young people into taking ownership and leadership of reclaiming their neighborhoods. And that goes if a young person is in tech, if they're in farming, if they're in fashion, if they're in photography. How are we harnessing a new space that can evolve them to both tell the stories of the past, but be much in the future of what they see themselves becoming? You know, the space becomes a vehicle of harnessing and cultivating an encouragement, mentorship, and connection gap for such narratives. So I see that, you know, with what we're doing currently, there's many young people in coding, many young people developing apps, looking at the tech frontier as a huge contributor of mapping the neighborhood onto the World Wide Web. You know, and so allowing these young people who love hip hop and who've grown up in the culture to really attract themselves to the change they can make by bringing these new issues, you know. And part of it in Uganda, what's also unique is like, with the work we've been doing, we're seeking to establish a leadership cohort, right, that literally is directly connected to local councils and local leaders. Like right now, we have young brothers in Ginger. Brother Mazi, you've met Brother Ram, and they're making instruments. They have started a garbage collection company. But it's hip, it's cool, it's hip hop. They're reclaiming the cleaning of the village and their town by showing young people we could employ you, we could put you on, you could still make your music. And we're, you know, these I think are some of the things when young people are given access to become owners of their neighborhoods, they literally churn out solutions that advance them. You know, so from an innovative sense, it's where we're looking, you know, here in Uganda with our experience. Of course, we have the commercial platform. And many companies here, you know, definitely didn't want to affiliate with the culture. But we see what has happened is that from our diasporic connection to diasporic organization that understand the culture, we've developed a strong relationship. Like, let's say when you say Bavubuka, in Kampala, there's, you know, there's Bavubuka, but there's also the partnership with WBL. And what do we get from WBL? Knowledge, learning, and dare to be inspired constantly. So we're ever evolving because we see their action points. And so I think that in collaboration too, we've taught these young men to collaborate village to village, neighborhood to neighborhood, and to be a point of information for one another. And so I think that we're definitely at a brim right now as practitioners who are in action to set a new wave and a new tone of how our neighborhoods are celebrating the culture, are growing from the culture, and are benefiting from the culture.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, from our side, I think, like I mentioned earlier on, the biggest thing that we confronted with is the state of mind. I mean, to date, we've sent over 250 young people to international events, whether it be the World DMC, DJ Champs, or to Battle of the Year in Germany, or, you know, there's a Trinity International Hip Hop Festival where we send one of the best MCs. And all the time doing this, we realize that, like, fundamentally, we're not addressing the issue of sense of self-worth, you know, and understanding that we're in a society that's constantly being confronted by capitalism in its harshest form. And so without, like, addressing that issue, we need to also, we aren't really solving the problem, you know, because a lot of young people are chasing that dream. And so what we've done is we've looked at ways to actually self-support ourselves as an organization. How do these young kids that we learn to MC at the schools, how do they see ways that the school could benefit, and their school, what they pay for school fees is covered as a priority, you know, so the money being plowed back into our community instead of actually, like, buying these flights and spending our money on international flight companies, you know. So for us, it's about how do we, because we have a history in our country of not supporting our own. We'll buy any, like, big brand name, but we won't buy what's local, you know. And so to change the fundamental thinking of how do I support what's from my community. And so each of these schools, they put on a concert from scratch, they work out the posters, they do the sound, they do the performance, and from that they raise the money, and the kids figure out financially how much they need, how many people they need to have in the venue, and sell the tickets. So all of the process is actually understood by the community, so they can do this themselves without us being around, you know. And so I feel like a lot of the things that we see that's necessary to change, some of the older MCs, the guys who've been from Black Noise or from Prophets of the City, they'd actually implemented themselves. Like, we toured Scandinavia on our own, you know. We didn't have any management, and we had to use a special technique to do that in order to not only perform on weekends, but to do workshops throughout the week, you know. So the techniques, I think, the innovation that we've done in the past, we're now looking at how can we sustain it and how can we share that with the next generation of young people, so it becomes self-sustainable and not depending on corporations, you know, outside money.
Okay. Yeah, Mazi, yeah. You hear me, yeah? Okay. Innovation. I'll speak.
Innovation and collaboration. So
Yeah, innovation, yeah.
how you're
Sure.
approaching innovation and who you're collaborating with.
Sure. So to begin with, I mean, I'll speak from a perspective of graffiti art. You know, innovation. Till this day, you know, there'll be still people who are the purists who will say, "Oh, that's not graffiti. That's stencils. That's street art. That's not graffiti art. How it was, and how it should be." I think there has been an evolution in thinking, whilst there are many still kind of perhaps even stuck to an extent. Many have pioneered and have taken it as their own. For example, you know, almost kind of embracing the idea that, you know, graffiti art can be written in Arabic, in whatever language, in Mandarin, or wherever it travels, it takes on it kind of embeds itself in the land that it goes to, rather than almost a kind of a form of imperialism of where, you know, you have, you know, English script imposed on, you know, in parts of the Middle East, right? And why was that the case? And up until really, sadly, quite recently, did we not see that? You know, maybe only over the past 15 years or so has those who have kind of really kind of found the strength to say, we can make this our own. We don't have to kind of import this version of it, if you like. So the idea of that innovation and of people, of those kind of embracing new forms. I mean, I always say I experiment with video projection and projection mapping onto buildings. That is really an evolution of graffiti art, because what we're doing is we might not be painting with colors on the buildings, but we projecting light and transforming the visual landscape. And I think it's that level of thinking, you know, it's an art form that is quite can be slightly insular, right? Perhaps where we are in our world, in our space, and to an extent the movement can be, and a lot within it can be very much like, we don't really care about perceptions out there and connecting or conveying to the masses out there of what our culture is, right? And what that sometimes results in is a slightly, within some circles, I'm not saying all, becomes quite insular, where we aren't open to new ideas. For example, just as I mentioned, that I might not be, you know, have a spray can in my hand, but I'm using a projector as my tool to light up that building so that people driving past are going to see this film projected, you know, typography projected on this building, right? So coming out of that mindset, or trying to almost recognize the power of taking our art form and our culture beyond the boundaries that we often like to keep it within, right? And I know it's uncomfortable work because we have to navigate kind of, you know, areas of, you know, government and city authorities and all of that world that we perhaps, there's a kind of a push and pull or a tension of like, do we engage with that or do we kind of build from within, right? So putting all of that aside, I think it's imperative and it's key for the evolution and the innovation and the kind of the growth of our movement for us to go outside of our world, right? And go outside of our comfort zones, take off the hat of an artist, which I always, you know, I always try my best to do, which is say, I'm not the artist, I'm the organizer. You know, you use the word organizer, Mazi, yeah, of the producers, of the creators, of those who are doing the connecting, bringing other artists in and connecting the dots globally, etc. Right? And just to end on this point, that idea of connectivity and going outside of our worlds that we comfortably can sit within is this idea that there's nobody. I mean, I know you just alluded to the place in France that is people who are documenting, gathering, and creating these resources that are crucial resources for this next young generation that's coming along, that has information at their fingertips and just scrolling their Instagram to see art that we would have had to travel thousands of miles to discover, right? To go and see a graffiti artist in New York and visit them and hang out at their studio, or wait for them to come past so you can say, you know, I want to show you my work. Now they can just go on their phone and do this, right? Whilst it's a blessing and it's a beauty, there's something so disturbing about the fact that we just scroll and take these things for granted, right? What the hell is going on? So that generation, I'm sorry to lengthen this point, but I'll finish on this one. That connectivity that's required between these generational these divides that are present, right? Of how we can provide these resources. Of the way I see it is the work that we have done, not to say, oh, you must acknowledge what we've done historically for this new generation, just for our egos, but rather for their growth, right? A resource in terms of a historical timeline that, did you know that this happened in the 70s and the 80s? Just like in the graffiti community, people will be oblivious to this book called Subway Art, right? Which for me is criminal, right? The book Subway Art, which changed everything in terms of street art and taking it to the masses, not through film, not through internet. It was a book that was published and printed around the world. That level of connectivity of conveying, building a resource, whether it's online or whether it's through conventions, so that this Generation Z or whatever they're called now can actually connect and build upon what we've created. And I feel that's a responsibility and a duty to do, right? But also done sensitively, because I think too often we get it wrong. It's almost just a bunch of old people saying, we were the pioneers and you must know who we were and what we did. But rather it's come from a place of a bit of guidance to say, we want your art to be the best. We don't want you to reinvent the wheel. Learn from what came before, learn from the mistakes we made, and take that and run with it and make it your own.
You know, I think each of you bring up excellent points, and I want to kind of touch on something. This is my second time talking to Emile in 2022, and he continues to talk about the pervasiveness of capitalism as a kind of corrosive element to building community. I wonder, because the Queen passed recently, I've seen a lot of talk on social media about colonialism, again, in popular social media. And I feel like on some levels, what Emile was talking about in terms of going into schools with curriculum is a kind of anti-colonial approach to education, centering the lives and creation of the people who are actually being educated. So I wonder, how do you all think hip hop as a platform, as a medium, as a set of artistic practices, as a philosophical approach to the world, the idea that it's this leaderless movement? It's a movement that doesn't have a president, doesn't have a CEO. It has presidents and CEOs, but they don't tell everybody or run what everyone does. I wonder how you think in this kind of moment of anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism, does hip hop have an opportunity, particularly in a global context, to contribute something different, something new to the way we think about the power of hip hop culture? Anybody want to jump in? Go ahead.
Oh, is it me?
Yeah, let's start with you.
Oh, yeah. I thought the Bob was going to go. Yeah, and I like, for me, it's a unique environment, right? Because of the newness of the change, and so people almost being in the euphoria of the Mandela sainthood era, you know, and that thinking that they are free completely. So we are still, you know, finding our feet and finding our own stories, because a lot of the research has been kept in universities and in books that a lot of these kids can't afford. And so you have people going that we've now started to work with, people at universities, and breaking the divide so that the story that is told is actually the practitioner or the person that was actually there during the struggle, you know, and that many times Mandela himself said that I stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And so he meant these other people that were also involved. And so now we're finding those people in different communities to speak for themselves and to document them in a manner that it's their story being told. Yeah. And in the same way that Mohammed just said, the hip hop community doing the same thing. South Africa has its own hip hop museum up in Johannesburg, where we're finding ways to actually get people to tell their own story, irrespective of the fact that you were a practitioner or you were just standing around the circle watching, because all voices count in building the actual story. And so we're in a unique place where we are confronted with this massive past that takes up almost 80% of the information. And ironically, 89.5% of the kids do not make it to tertiary education in South Africa. So often our conversation is how do we find ways for them to like start farming on their own, to create jobs that are outside of the norm, that do not involve them having to go to university, or the dream soul that anybody can make it if they really wish, which is unfortunately not how it works, you know. In the same way that a lot of MCs that used to, you know, be the best MCs used to have, when you have a gathering, they sit and they speak about how they got signed. Our conversation now is not about that. It's about who are the guys that have been surviving of their creative ability. Who of them are there that have what do they call it? Like diversified the income streams. They may be a b-boy, but there's one b-boy, the best b-boy in the country at the moment, about to represent South Africa. He also studied how to make coffee, you know. So he works in a company he started himself, and that for me is the type of person I'll bring and say, look, this is the reality of being a b-boy. You have to have various ways of income to survive. And so I think we're starting to be at the point where we're not like believing the hype that capitalism for a long time has sold, that there's only this one way that you have to study and you have to do this one job, that there's this, you know, diversify your income streams in order for you to pay your bills, you know. And so I think that is becoming more and more prominent in the community of the way that people are starting to think, you know, to make a reality of how do you actually live off all of your skills, not just if you're a b-boy or MC or writer or any of the other things, you know. And also to come back to the right, is that everyone's story is important, you know. And often we have a tradition where people are waiting for some academic to tell the story for them, and not to knock, because academics obviously have what they need to write about because of the research that they wish to focus on, but sometimes it will never reach everybody, and so we need to have the other voices come to the fore, so all stories are being told.
Let me sharpen this question a little bit, because I remember about 10 years ago, a filmmaker, I believe based in the US, created this documentary called Hip Hop Colony. And it was about the idea of hip hop being used as a tool of imperialism, particularly in Africa. And the French example that I gave, part of, I think, what's important for us as people who are part of the community is to recognize the value and the potential damage of institutionalization, right? So for those of you that are aware, the US government through the State Department has a program called Next Level, where they send hip hop ambassadors around the world to do kind of workshops and performances and work with local communities as a part of person-to-person diplomacy. France has the same thing. That's actually why they have that center in Paris. And so it's not about, the great thing about that is it's another kind of that multiple streams of income that Emile's talking about. That could be another way that you're an ambassador for hip hop. But while you're being an ambassador for hip hop, you're also being an ambassador for the country that you come from and what it's trying to do in the country that you're visiting. So thinking about how it is that there are kind of public conversations and then kind of not so public conversations, and recognizing that there has to be both for those things to have value for the community and for the people that are funding. But this question about hip hop as something that many people argue begins in the United States. I know people who argue that it begins on the continent. And I'm not here to debate either one of those two things, because I think that multiple things can be true at the same time. Life is not math. It really is complex. But I wonder how you think about your work. And when I say anti-colonial, I don't really just mean I don't mean you're anti a particular government. I really actually mean kind of the way Baba talks about his work, this idea of Luga flow, lifting up the idea that it's valuable to rap in your own language for people in your own country versus chasing an audience someplace else that speaks another language. So that to me is anti-colonial work. It doesn't have to be anti, the Queen or anti-England or anti-English. It's pro Lugandan, which is fine. But in a world that's pushing people to adopt European standards, whichever country we're talking about, that's anti-colonial work. So how do you think about the work that you're doing as anti-colonial, even if it's shifting the narrative about an immigrant population in a European country, telling a different story than people are accustomed to? How do you think about your work as being anti-colonial? Anybody?
I take that. I mean, back to the source. You know what I'm saying? Back to the source, as in the literal sense of the word. Hip hop gives us the ability to evolve, but also stay connected to our authentic values. And from that stance, I believe that over time, at least being around, having grown up in Canada and then coming back on the continent, I started looking in between the lines of what makes us authentic to have something to contribute so that we can be able to reclaim our story, reclaim our narratives, and shift the ideology of being dependent or reliant on systems that were not designed by the energy that we represent. Because most often we've been subdued, we've been looked at as we are below or we are under, and we haven't had a chance to really move in the glory of how we feel when we're in the cipher, or when you're b-boying and you're rocking your best moves, or
Mazi, your mic's off, I think.
I said, I think we're talking a little bit about too much anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism. The corporations are stop doing all that talking globally, while Baba's Wi-Fi connection gets worked on. Do either of you want to contribute how it is that you think about, and it doesn't, you don't have to frame your work as anti-something. You can frame it as pro-something. I'm saying that's what I'm seeing on social in America, is people who are from places that used to be a part of the kind of United Kingdom, the territories, saying that they don't want to continue. And here's the things that they didn't like about it. So thinking about just kind of this moment, how is hip hop contributing to the conversation about things that are happening in the world, not just the art that people are making to express their identities locally? Is there a place for hip hop in this kind of conversation, particularly in a global context? What do you think, Mohammed? You're still muted. You're still muted for some reason. Did capitalism really just try to shut us down? Fatima, is your mic working?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think about this question while Mohammed maybe unplugs and replugs his mic? This question about how do you think about your work as either being anti-colonialism or just pro the people that you work to engage? And I know your audience is international.
Mm-hmm.
The artists that you're using are international, and so maybe it's not anti-colonialism, maybe it's anti-patriarchy, because you're lifting up the voices of women, the contributions of women from communities around the world. So how do you think about the value of that in this moment of lifting up the voices and creativity of women?
Yeah, it's valuable, and also when you have like women from India, for instance, from Indonesia, from Africa, that they have like that express with their own style, like a rapper from an MC from India has his own style, language, and rap completely different from someone from Africa or someone from Japan, and that's a thing that make it, you know, as we said in Belle Hip Hop, make her difference a strength. And that's the strength of hip hop, is the difference. When you have like your own culture, your own style, your own backgrounds, your roots, and you express all these feelings through hip hop, and you have all the diversity on scene, it's really beautiful. When you talk about also the vision of hip hop, when you talk about colonialism and this stuff, in Belle Hip Hop is working on equality, because I made some interviews last time about the place of women in hip hop, and some people said yes, we live in kind of misogyny, that women has not the place that they deserve in hip hop culture. So all elements. I used to say that it's the mirror of the society. It's only that, because until now women struggle for their rights at work or in their social place. In hip hop, is these positive values of hip hop is showing that women are taking their place. And they express everything. They express their feelings and through hip hop culture. So I used to say, if this culture was kind of misogyny, these women will use another art to express their position and what they feel in their respective countries. So hip hop is kind of a place where you can find equality. There is no someone like a leader or like a boss, or as you talk about colonialism, all people are equal in hip hop. The question that we used to talk about is talent only, and that's the things I wanted to say through these two questions for Belle Hip Hop. Yeah.
I definitely appreciate that. And I also want to say, for the people that are just tuning in, how's she gonna say it's equal and she's the only woman on the panel? There were supposed to be 2 women here. Like, we really made real effort to try.
I didn't say anything about that. It's okay.
I appreciate that, because we made the effort, because there are amazing women doing this work whose voices need to be heard. And it becomes a responsibility of people that put together things like this to find those women, to make it available, make the opportunity available to come and share what it is they're doing, what it is that they're saying. With that being said, Babaluku just came back, and then his Wi-Fi disappeared again. This is a real battle against capitalism. So we're at the hour and 15-minute mark. We're in the last 15 minutes of this conversation. I wonder, because this is a conversation about the future, what, if any, work, because this is something I'm not aware of for anybody other than Babaluku, what work you're doing to teach the next generation how to do the things that you're doing, either within your organizations or projects or beyond. Like how are you making, and I don't mean kids, I mean kind of the young professionals, because I feel like everybody on this call is over the age of 30. So those people that are somewhere between, 18 and 35 who are part of our lives and our communities, how are we training those young people, those young adults, to do the kind of work we're doing either within our organizations or within our greater community? If we're talking about the future, like, wouldn't it be amazing, Mohammed, if it didn't take 25 years for the next Aerosol Ali to be able to do the things you're doing, because she or they actually saw the blueprint of what you were doing and built something that's similar in the same time and in the same space? Like, wouldn't that be amazing if you could actually witness the people that are coming behind you ascending in ways that have taken all of us longer than I think any of us anticipated it taking?
Yeah, just to respond to that, I would say absolutely, and that kind of pivotal moment I mentioned about a kind of enough is enough moment. Now we've done this for years, we've learned, we've made mistakes, and now it's time to kind of really think deeply and collaboratively with friends, colleagues from all over, as we are now, sharing ideas, sharing practice. And for me personally, I'm kind of done with. I've done it for too long now, a couple of decades of doing workshops, of doing, youth engagement programs, right? I'm done with that, right? With the model that has been put upon us, which is, institutions or schools or colleges, universities saying, we would like you to come and do these workshops. I'm not a babysitter, right? I'm not going to sit here and come into an institution and do something that fits their model and, works to their time, their timelines. No, we create and we shape it now. And for me, I've realized it's almost a kind of not a burden. What's the word I'm thinking of? I feel a heavy sense of responsibility to take our years of experience and disseminate that information in a form that, like, it can't take 20 years, right? We've got to intensely offload that information so others can run with it. And for me, as I said, I'm done with that engagement structure that has been put upon us, but rather define our own, right? Where we can mentor small groups, right? Initially, I always say small, not packing them out where institutions come to us, say, we got you 30 teenagers, right? No, I'm not interested in 30. 30, I'm not gonna work, right? I'd rather have 5 over the next 6 weeks, right? Or 5 over the next 2 weeks, every single day, starting at 7 in the morning and ending in the evening, where we can share our formulas, our ideas, our practice, even the spirit of what we do. Forget even the kind of the the actual practical art itself of this is how you grab a spray can, this is how you tell a story through visual arts. No, we're going to rewind and talk about why and how the power of art in the public space can transform us psychologically and mentally when we walk into school, work every single day, what that art does to the psyche, to the mentality, and how that can have an impact on community and the feeling of community in the same way weather has impact upon us. Just seeing, that's why England, we're so miserable, right? Because we have rain and gray skies all the time, right? Just how the same way we have weather impact us, how does public art of color placed in an urban gray landscape has, what impact that has upon how we behave and how we respond? Those are the things that I want to teach brilliant young minds so that we can create that next generation. But the reality is nobody's going to do that for us, right? We have to acquire the space, build our networks, work with people like yourselves to say, can you guys come and deliver a module for us, and vice versa? How do we connect the dots and build this ourselves from within?
Babaluku's back with us. We were talking about how imperialism interrupted the jewels you were dropping. You got frozen. We moved on to a new question, which is what each of us is doing. I said you're the only person on the call that I know is developing a young leader in the form of Gilbert. So what people are doing to kind of develop the next generation of leaders, since this is a conversation about the future. I'll let you think about it while Emile or Fatima jumps in. Which one do you want to jump in?
I'll go. Yeah. So as I was saying earlier, we hear the wood rhymes without me in the country. So I think the torch has been passed, and the people that have taken the reins have been part of facilitation for the last 20 years or something, you know. And so they know the process. There's a set curriculum that they teach, and there's connected books and rhymes and material that they've been left to use. But I also want to say that it is your action usually that is more powerful than your word, and the legacy that you leave is based on what you've done a lot of the times, not what you say. And so I have been lucky to influence people like Osmic Menno, who runs the South African Hip Hop Museum. He runs Back to the City, and he runs the South African Hip Hop Awards. All because he came to Cape Town and attended the event that I gave. And he saw the potential, me being from Cape Town, where it's not the business hub, and him being from Johannesburg, he was able to use the position that he is in and his love for hip hop to develop what he did, And so I feel like that's an important thing, that the people get to see the work you do and be around you long enough to internalize the work that you're sharing. I just want to also mention that early on when I spoke about capitalism, I'm also speaking about, and exactly like Mazi says, not that you're anti that, is that you're doing this other work. And we've just recently, I work with Professor Sami Alim from UCLA, and I work with Professor Adam Hopp and Quinton Williams to create a dictionary of the unspoken language of the people of the Western Cape. The language is called Kaaps. It's the original language that the Afrikaners based their Afrikaans on. So it was a stolen language from people of color who created this Creole language. And so now we're creating a dictionary within the education system, within the universities, that can then be shared with all the schools where these kids, the kids come from, and also in a way that they understand the etymology, the way that the words are broke down, the history of the word, where the words come from. And the online version of that dictionary, when you click on the word, you'll hear a rap song or a play. One of the plays we did was Afrikaans, about the Black history of this language. So for me, it's about the action. What are you doing that kids can see that you're manifesting the words that you're speaking about.
Fatima, Babaluku? Who would like to go?
I think it's been very interesting having been here for the past 15 since I chose to come back to Uganda. But Brother Emile said something, the idea that you make the choice to grow with, these young people, to learn from you, you learn from them, and then there's a future you both are imagining that's possible, and you're dedicated to arrive to that future, regardless of being unaware of what will be there. You have some sort of idea. I think in Bavubuka, we did the same way. It's take the idea that you start Bavubuka Foundation for the outreach purposes of reaching out to communities. Then you gear these young people, empower them up to go in schools, in hospitals, in communities, in ghettos, to take their message and connect with their peers and be a point of inspiration. And then you rise to a couple years later, say, okay, now you need to own your business or become a dynasty. And in a dynasty, we're talking currency, sustainability, being able to develop models, learning about business. What are the possibilities that are possible? Then you evolve to where we are now when we say Bavubuka Nation, which is the legacy piece, and that legacy piece is like everything created here on Forward for a Future is to create room for these young, vibrant leaders now to have a convening center where they can always tap in for knowledge, tap in to be able to be informed or connected to, or share their ideas for feedback. But there's that idea that when we're doing this work, we have to continue, evolving ourselves with the times. and allowing ourselves to get out of the way so these young people can fully be supported to build the new futures we are participating in. And I like what Brother Ali said, you know, where he was talking about, oh, I'm tired of this kind of, you know, energy or programming or limitation. That is facts. You know, we are in a place where we need to be showing young people the brilliance, the glory, the impact, the beauty we feel within the culture. We are in the moment in time where we have to be emanating that due to our stories and the journeys traveled. Like they look at us, like here in Uganda, for me, I say like everywhere I move or everywhere I go on a daily, there's always a story that's being rendered from the past 15. And it's always a story of success, like young men who are pilots now, young men who are engineers, young men who are head of companies. But they used to come to the space back in the days, and the only thing they always say, they say, you created a space that made us feel like there was something different and there was something possible and that we could do something with our lives. And I think that when you sit with that kind of information and feedback, like a young man from England called me telling me a story, or you should create a platform for Babaluku scholars because we came from the community and now we are successful individuals and we want to give back, you know? And so that kind of feedback evolves you into understanding impact, legacy. And right now where we at, like here in Uganda, what we're looking at is how can we set a standard forward for the culture to be fully acknowledged, represented. I mean, we're talking to the kingdom right now to endorse the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace. I'm in those talks with those people. At the same time, we have the Global Peace Ambassador is also adapting to the narrative of knowing we've been here for this long and why haven't they acknowledged our contribution. So there's so much at the table in this moment where we are for us to be, you know, the musketeers of the paradigm shift. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot is changing and we are pivoting to create new accesses that definitely did not exist before. Like I think our stories are pivoting platforms for the next generation to take space. And as long as we're doing that, I think like that's what we all have in common here. Like we are in a day and time where we are fully coming through our process, our stories, our years of toiling with the movement, struggling, traveling all over the globe just to connect, just to feel like we are not alone. You know, I think we're in a time where just this convening alone that we're having here is affirming all of us and making us double time stronger to literally imprint the legacy of why we were here. And I think that there's nothing greater than that, you know what I mean? Like living out our purpose and ensuring that the generation has tied onto it and moving forward.
Do you wanna be the final comment on this question, Fatima? Just to remind you, the question is just about what you're doing to develop that next generation of leadership.
Yeah, has exactly what Babaluku said about the fact that the connection between the artists, the connection between the association, the connection between the youth people. So the hip hop culture is very important, and that's this guarantee the evolution and the the future of hip hop. That's the experience we have since the first edition of the festival is the connection between the artists. Last time I talked with Aja from the Reminders, and we spoke about another artist from Switzerland, and until now they are connected, and they both met during the first edition of the festival, and during which we made like a cipher, and they were together on the project, and until now they are connected. And it's also the same case with other artists, and this connection and the bridges built between the artists is really important, and it's the positive results of all the projects we settled, like the festival, like the project, like where all the artists from all the countries can be joined and can share the experiences. For me, it's an important point and positive impact for the future of hip hop.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us for this hour and a half. I know all of your time is super valuable, and this is for all of you time away from your families. I wanted to just point out the fact we just got done doing our annual retreat for Words, Beats, and Life, and at our last year's retreat, we said as we were approaching our 20th year, we wanted to actually think about ourselves differently and not just be Words, Beats, and Life, but be Words, Beats, and Love. And so we created these little T-shirts that are for our team. Because we don't talk about love enough in hip hop. We don't talk about love enough, especially among men. And I think that to be really honest, it's the conversations we had with Fatima and the women that have been convened through the Belle Hip Hop that made us start thinking about the value of the voices and creativity, perspectives, and experiences that are missing in some of our expression. I always, and this is with love, I always say to Baba, he always talks about the brothers. And I've been to the spaces and the sisters are there too. Like we gotta say the sisters too. We're so used to saying the. And so with that being said, I want to say I thank each of you for the work you do. I thank each of you for joining us today. My goal is to see all of you in 2023 in person. And to let each of you know, we plan to bring back our teach-in, which is a global convening of folks like us, in person here in Washington, D.C. this April. So I'm hopeful to be able to see all of you, if not in your country, in our country, to talk about the future of the work that we're doing and how we can collaborate together to create the kinds of systems that each of us on our own and in collaboration with others are dedicated to seeing built, sustained, and grow. Thank you each for joining us today. And for those of you that are tuning in, I've been fortunate enough to be joined by Emile joining us from South Africa, by Fatima joining us from Brussels, from Babaluku joining us from Uganda, and my brother Emile Ali joining us from England, Birmingham to be specific. This is the second in a series of conversations about the futures of hip hop. The next conversation we're going to have is actually going to be on my birthday, October the 15th, at the DC Music Summit in person, talking about technology and as a part of the future of hip hop. If you're in Washington, D.C., please come and join us. It's going to be hosted at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. If you're not in D.C., we plan to film it and broadcast it later. But we want to continue to have these conversations about the future because the future is tomorrow. It's not just in the far off distance. It's here before we know it. So thinking about it, planning for it, and preparing for it will make it more likely that we are successful in it. I'm Mazi Mutafa, Executive Director of Words, Beats, and Life. Love to all of y'all. Peace.
God bless the cipher, the rotation. God bless the beatboxer's lungs, amen for breath control, the smiles that pry open faces when flow goes unbroken, and the smoke. To stories you can see, to coming in on the one.